more than anything. I think all of you know that, but she has brought more to this community than anybody that I know. And her work is tireless. So, yes. So before I could go into, and I'm not, I'm ready to bring her out, and so are you guys. I could go down decades of work, decades of book, decades of documentaries, everything with Earth Files, all of that, the stuff, the TV, the film, everything. Right now, it's all coming to this stage. She's doing whistleblowers today. UFO whistleblowers. Jimmy Church says, welcome my friend, Linda Moulton Howe, to the 2023.
It is nice to have fun when you work. And I think that this is the 21st year, if Serena is here or somebody has a correction, but I think this is the 21st year that I have come to Conscious Life Expo since it began in 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every year except COVID.
Yeah.
And CLE has always, for me, had that fun atmosphere that makes you want to stay up all night, especially to talk about UFOs and ETs. And now in this year of 2023, the whispers are getting louder that finally some governments and power brokers are finally going to crack open the truth that we're not alone in this universe. And so I want to applaud Robert Quicksilver, my dear friend Serena Taylor, and their CLE colleagues for holding this all together, even through the horrible COVID pandemic, with cheers to overcoming Earth's classified reality. That's what we're in, classified reality. And we need facts and truths on the record. That's what I need. What I want to share with you today are glimpses inside the much bigger box of reality that Earth and humans are in. These recent glimpses from UFO whistleblowers that I'm going to be sharing with you today have evolved from a 2022 face-to-face meeting with a retired Pentagon intelligence analyst. He confirmed many details that I have received in encrypted proton mail since late 2020 from a retired aerospace manager. And so, for historic perspective, the way I'm looking at today in the last 21 years is that I'm going to bring you news that has a 73-year look back to Roswell, New Mexico, and the UFO crash that went public on July 8, 1947, because of an error that was made at the Roswell Army Airfield. Otherwise, we would never have known about that either. So today, I'm going to try to lift some of the covers that are coming to me through two people that I consider to be highly reliable, and that I wish that we were in a world where they were standing where I am right now, and that you all, every one of us Homo sapien on the planet, could hear the truth from the people who are making the classified reality. So now, in terms of the aerospace manager's long career, it included the challenge of developing space-based energy weapon systems during the Reagan administration. And in that 1980s work, he became aware of others, as he puts it, working inside that program. And he wrote to me, when I mention others, it is only one group that I and my coworkers have had exposure with. They are non-humans from two planets that orbit the star 82G Aradani, about 20 light years from Earth. The adult beings there are described as 6 to 8 feet tall, very pale white skin, almost albino looking, thin facial structure, almost bony, very intelligent and soft-spoken, and they have family structures similar to ours, with children, spouses, and social groups. They are our true friends that help us the most, what you, Linda, refer to as the tall whites.
Wow.
We have had by far the most interaction with this tall white group on technology exchange. And we have done society studies with their culture at the Procyon star system, where the tall white civilization is mainly based beyond 82G Aradani. And I just stress that. We have done, meaning humans, society studies with their culture, tall whites, at the Procyon star system. The tall whites have also been involved with the construction of the USS LeMay starship by helping us plot out stellar points of navigation in deep space, close quote. I have been able to ask a military aerospace source if the United States now has secret deep space vehicles for long distance space travel to other stars. And the answer that I received is yes. The United States Space Force is the 6th and newest branch of American military, officially established December 20th of 2019. The first new armed services branch in 73 years. What the public was not told is the American Space Force has been active long before December 2019 and has 3 deep space vehicles, more commonly called starships, each named after historic military leaders. One is the USS Curtis LeMay, named after 4-star General Curtis LeMay, who was U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff from 1961 to 1965. I have been told the USS LeMay, quote, has crewed in outer space since 2003 and has been to 28 different catalog solar systems in our small arm of the Milky Way galaxy, close quote. A second long-distance space vehicle is named after Major General Hoyt Vandenberg. He was U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff and President Truman appointed member of MJ-12 that secretly studied UFOs and ETs for the president beginning in 1947. The third long-distance space vehicle is named after Navy Admiral Roscoe Helen Keller, who was the first CIA director from 1947 to 1950 and was a member of the Board of Governors for NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena from 1957 to 1962. Helen Keller was also a Truman-appointed member of MJ-12. The USS Helen Keller is operated jointly by DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, NSA, the National Security Agency, and JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command, based at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Here is a breakdown from my military aerospace source about the 3 deep space starships. Quote, the USS Vandenberg is built mainly for reconnaissance, stellar mapping, laying out navigation paths to avoid cosmic obstacles, high radiation zones, newborn star regions, and making first contact with other life forms. The USS Vandenberg is really the tip of the spear as we venture into space. It has the largest crew of tall whites and Nordics from the Sirius B solar system, 8.6 light years from Earth. They are on board the Vandenberg to help first contact interactions with other species of life in our universe. The tall whites work in conjunction with these other multi-country crews. The Nordic group is the oldest we have cataloged and have a standing respect of sorts from other groups of extraterrestrial civilizations, mainly due to the Nordics' longevity and keeping peace
and any outside non-friendly groups at bay. The Nordics have very advanced technology that they don't share, except to say some of their technology is incorporated into both the USS Helen Keller and the USS Hoyt Vandenberg under the Tall Whites, supervision.
Most of the other intelligent contacts we have made in cataloging the 28 different star systems are aware that the Tall Whites and Nordics are supervising us humans. The Tall Whites and Nordics do not tell us where to go or where to look for other civilizations. They only monitor our activity while being on board our spacecraft, close quote. The USS Helen Keller is dedicated to group study mainly, quote, "It is built differently than the Vandenberg in the areas of carrying large payloads to the surface of planets and to keeping downward stations supplied for long duration of planetary surface studies," close quote. The USS Curtis LeMay has been able to crew in outer space since 2003 because it is a US deep space vehicle capable of Deep Quantum Tunneling Protocol, or DQTP.
That's the physics of tunneling through space-time with Alcubierre warp drive to explore in other solar systems. Deep quantum tunneling might reduce travel time of, say, 50 light years down to only 5 Earth days of travel. Wikipedia defines deep quantum tunneling as a quantum mechanical phenomenon where the wave function can propagate through a potential barrier. Tunneling may be explained in terms of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, in that a quantum object can be known as a wave or as a particle in the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. In other words, the uncertainty in the exact location of light particles allows those photons to break rules of classical mechanics and move in space without passing over the potential energy barrier.
My military aerospace source says that with help from friendly ET allies, such as the Tall Whites and Blonde Nordics, the USS Curtis LeMay was built to explore Earth's interstellar neighborhood since 2003, exploring 22 different solar systems in our arm of the Milky Way galaxy, including where blonde, blue-eyed, pale-skinned Nordics inhabit Procyon A and B, a binary star system 11.45 light years from Earth. There, the very bright Procyon A orbits the fainter companion Procyon B. The pair orbit each other with a period of about 41 years along an elliptical orbit. The Nordics also inhabit another binary star system, Sirius A and B. Sirius A is the brightest star in Earth's sky, and there is its much smaller and dimmer companion, Sirius B. That star system is home to blonde, blue-eyed, white-skinned Nordic humanoids, and another humanoid species that lives in water, like the historic fish-scale people of Mesopotamia and Mali, Africa. But my source of this information stresses, quote, "Our true friends that help us the most are the Tall Whites. These extraterrestrials are from 82G Aradani, about 20 light years from Earth, which is one of the 22 catalog star systems that our US Space Force has explored. It is a main sequence star with a stellar classification of G6V and hosts a system of at least 3 super-Earth planets," close quote. Even in the 1970 book, Habitable Planets for Man, 82G Eridani was given the highest estimate for habitability. Now continuing with information to my questions from the military aerospace source. Quote, "And the Tall Whites are extremely intelligent humanoids with white hair, pale eyes, very white skin, like white chalk. The US Space Force has
worked closely with them on multiple programs for a long time, and we have had by far the most interaction with this tall white group on technology exchange. We have also done society studies with their culture at the 82G Eridani star system, where the control of their tall white civilization is mainly based. I myself consider the tall whites to be our Earth human source race, and that's my source saying that, after everything I have read and heard in meetings through the years. The tall whites keep our intelligence folks in JSOC informed and up to date on what other intelligences are visiting Earth and for what reasons. Linda, you talked about the DIA analyst who told you in December of 1999 that our government had proof that 3 competing ET civilizations have been fighting over Earth for at least 270 million years. Well, what I've been told is that controlling Earth 270 million years ago was definitely the Sirius B group of Nordics. And these ETs look very close to us humans. If I sat you in a room with them, you would not know they are off-worlders, as we say. The Sirius B group looks very close to Norwegian or Scandinavian people. The texture of their skin is rough, like a person that spent most of their life suntanning a lot, and they have very thin facial features. And then, my source answered my question about the mid to late 1980s increase in sightings of black triangular and sometimes boomerang-shaped craft that blocked out stars as the craft slowly moved in night skies. He surprised me when he said they were not ETs. He said those triangles with lights in the corners were the first US space vehicles that could go out 2 light years to the Oort cloud that surrounds our solar system beyond the Kuiper Belt. My source says, quote, "We have had help from friendly ETs such as the tall whites and Nordics that have helped us build craft with worker bee types that we call programmed life forms or PLFs. These are all ash gray small beings that are artificial intelligence. They help carry out missions and use small craft shaped like manta rays, not discs. The ash gray small child size are biologically alive, but they are described in government reports as being a nuisance to operations even, being conducted by the powerful JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command, that is charged to study special operations and is involved in collaboration with extraterrestrials such as the tall whites and the Nordics. JSOC describes the programmed life forms as being designed for temporal space travel. This is a type of travel that we humans currently cannot do. The PLFs are grown, for a lack of better words, and are programmed for specific duties and mission assignments, just like human pilots are. The extraterrestrials that manage the programmed life forms are the much taller ancient braves. This is a very old race that do not travel through space often. They use these worker drones, the PLFs, to travel through space often. Notice I use the term through space, not in space. When the tall grays travel through space, time as we humans know it, it goes to a zero function of the waveform. That means you can travel instantaneously to any point in the universe in the blink of an eye. This is the holy grail that JSOC wants at any cost. We understand some of the physics, but it uses concepts that are difficult for us to grasp. Linda, our universe is a conscious entity. New studies imply the consciousness of observers are responsible for determining physical reality. And there's more about the little gray programmed life forms. It is the same type of craft that was involved in the 1947 Roswell incidents. It is shaped like a manta ray with small, flexible, vertical wingtips, and the wings are also flexible as well. The underbelly was covered with honeycomb-shaped glass ceramic-like structures, which are actually a type of waveguide using what is called CSE, cavity structure effect. The waveguide underbelly works similar to the way a waveguide works in a household microwave oven. Cavity structured effect is a key to understanding how these manta ray craft fly and levitate so quietly.
The key, as these two gentlemen talked to me about the bismuth, magnesium, zinc research that I did back in the 1990s and was reporting on Coast to Coast with Art Bell, that what they discovered is that the key to these cavity structured effect cells and these manta ray shaped craft is the layering of micron thick various metals, especially the magnesium, bismuth, and zinc. And that the layering of these metals, along with a very specific binding agent, is used to manufacture a skin that will nullify gravity for the craft that it is applied to. And there is so much that what I wanted to do is weave for you from one of my Earth Files YouTube channel broadcasts on June 8th. And that's why I wove this in here, because that's when I was concentrating with those two men on this particular script. And now I have more information. If I can get this to go. Well, I had never confronted this problem before. I do not know why. See if it's, sorry about that. This is a star map that I have been working on for about 18 months. And it started with pieces of information about the fact that this is the reality of the part of the solar system and its relationship to this little arm of the Milky Way galaxy that we're in. And that you can see how compressed the Procyon AB, you can see Epsilon Eridani, the hostile insects that I've reported quite a bit about on my Earth Files YouTube channel. They're only 10.5 light years from our sun. And there is this concentrated area where, in the far left, it shows Rigel and says it's reptilian now, originally Nordics before the Procyon exodus. And I have had this described to me that the people that I've been talking to, they know quite a bit about the fights between the Nordics, the tall whites, and the reptilians in this area of the Milky Way galaxy that involves our system. And this becomes relevant when you look back in time and history about what has been happening in this solar system that might ultimately explain some of the activities of things like the Anunnaki that I'll be talking about on Monday. Now let's hope that we can keep going here. why it would work so well and then it stopped working. This is really weird.
Sound like a
Maybe
speech.
somebody doesn't want me to present this.
Has a weird sound too.
I've never had anything like this ever. I want you to know this information too.
Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again?
Well, I've got my finger on.
No.
Restart and go back to the slideshow. That's okay. I thought it was pretty funny.
No, I mean, this is really. On a project, he was working elbow to elbow with a tall white. And he said you can feel the energy off of them. And he said he compared it to being with something that would have an equivalent of 5 Cray supercomputers for a brain. And said that he had experienced this several times. They would be working on a project related to the Curtis LeMay and the Helen Keller and the large starships. And some kind of a problem would come up that the humans are discussing with the tall white. And the way he put it, he said, the tall whites can extend their incredible mind into timelines, and they can go out into the future and follow whatever this problem is until they get to a point where they have some comprehension that if they pluck, or whatever verb you want to use, out of time, that they can pluck that particular problem at a very specific point, put it back in the past of where they are trying to engineer this issue in the large aerospace company. And then, depending upon what the tall white then analyzes with its mind, having moved it to the past, can move it up toward the present or completely to the present and change the problem. And that they did this on a regular basis. And he said, we all talked about and agreed that the tall whites were like being with a human that had 5 supercomputer crays for a brain. It's hard to imagine, and yet the tall whites are supposed to be very much older than we are in terms of evolutionary track in the universe. And if one sentence that they told me was true, the tall whites were estimated to be as much as 1 million years beyond us in some areas. And so part of what I'm trying to do is to help, if I can get the computer to help me here, is to bring you in. Is to bring you into brand new language. And this would be the language that when and after we are ever told the truth, that we're not alone, that we have been in fact working with, collaborating inside of starships, going into these other star systems, doing cataloging. It's 28 systems that we now have been in, all under the supervision of the tall whites and the Nordics. And I find this exciting, not scary. So I hope that now pray that this is going to come on. Yeah. last decade. And what I'm going to do, I was going to share these with you at the end while they're working on it, and hopefully we can get this prepared, is I want to share with you information that has come to me from them that I find to be really quite extraordinary. And I'm going to start with, it was a question that I asked them. What were they being literal that we were working with the tall whites and the Nordics directly on an ongoing basis in the construction of the LeMay and the Helen Keller and the Vandenberg starships? And here is the answer. Yes, our working group partnership do want us up on our feet and able to defend ourselves against any inbound hostile groups. And they're referring to the Frontaloids that probably several of you have seen the work I've done on the Frontaloids that was presented to President Ronald Reagan at Camp David, March 6 to 8, 1981. I've had two people who work in the five-sided building in Washington. They have seen my presentations at the Earth Files YouTube channel, and they let me know it is accurate. President Reagan was presented the information about the 5 extraterrestrial groups, and that the Frontaloid insects are our biggest worry. All right. Well, I went an inch this way, and now we're back over here.
Good job.
Way to stay in the flow. There you go.
Just a sec. Okay. In talking with these men who worked on the construction of the starships, they talked about that the 82G Eridani sun is a main sequence star with a stellar classification of G6V. 90% of all stars in this universe fuse hydrogen to helium in their solar cores. A G-type main sequence star such as G6V will fuse hydrogen for approximately 10 billion years and then turn into a red giant to die. And that's what our Earth's sun will do in about 5 billion more years. So our suns are very similar between the G Eridani and ours. The 82G Eridani solar system has at least 3 super-Earth planets around its main sequence yellow sun. As far back as 1970, a book entitled Habitable Planets for Man gave 82G Eridani the highest estimate for habitability. The capital letter G in the star's name stands for American astronomer Benjamin Gould, who did a survey of fixed stars down to the 7th magnitude within 100 degrees of Earth's south pole. Notice that closer to the left side of 82G Aradani are the famous bright stars Sirius A and B, with a notation from my source that Nordic ETs and water-living humanoids inhabit the Sirius solar system. That information echoes UK Professor Robert Temple's book, first published in 1976, entitled The Sirius Mystery, that describes a Western African Mali tribe's information about Sirius A and Sirius B even before the star was first discovered in 1862. Professor Temple asked, quote, "Was Earth visited by intelligent beings from a planet in the system of the star of Sirius?" Close quote. Professor Temple investigated the Dogon tribe in Mali, West Africa, that performed a dance about humanoids from the star Sirius coming to Mali long ago. The tribe even had accurate information about the sizes of Sirius A and B and their orbital cycles. Further, the tribe said that some beings from Sirius came to Mali covered with scales like fish, and the tribe called them Nomo. The word Nomo is derived from a Dogon tribe word that means to make one drink. And Nomos were also called masters of the water, implying they were amphibian humanoids. But my source also knew from communications with the tall whites that Sirius also has blonde, blue-eyed, Nordic-type extraterrestrials who have warred with reptilian humanoids for millions of years. In this star map, you can see that right above Sirius A and B is the star Rigel, which has the notation that it is now inhabited by reptilians who took over the Rigel solar system at the foot of the Orion constellation after a very real Star Wars, causing the Nordics to leave Rigel to the reptilians. The Nordics, defeated by the reptilians, went to the Procyon A and B solar system, where they still dominate to this day. So, tall, blonde, blue-eyed Nordic ETs are now in the Procyon A and B solar system, who left their original star system, Rigel, after war there with reptilian humanoids, who now control Rigel. And the reptilians, the Nordics, have been fighting each other from millennia, and they've been fighting each other over this planet as well. The Nordic species are sometimes referred to as a multi-world species like the tall whites and the original progenitor, orange grays. The term means that they started life on a particular planet and then evolved into populating many other planets and regions of space. The tall whites also have a base inside the largest moon in our solar system called Ganymede that orbits Jupiter. And Ganymede is the largest moon in our solar system. My source says the tall whites and Nordics have been working with American aerospace operations for a long time and are considered allies of us humans on Earth now. Their vested interest is in our survival, my source says, because the tall whites and Nordics work together to manipulate DNA in already evolving primates on Earth. And then the figure that I have been given is that the tall whites and Nordics have been manipulating DNA that ended up going into Homo erectus and Denisovans and Neanderthal and created us. That they were here 278 million years ago. And for those of you who watch my weekly Earth Files YouTube channel, you know that I have reported about a DIA source who in December of 1999, a long time ago, told me in a 7-hour meeting that our government had proof, that was the words he used, our government has proof that 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations have been in conflict with each other on Earth, and that the reptilians want Earth without humans on it. And when I asked the source, why would there be so much DNA manipulation here on Earth by extraterrestrials? He said, it relates to wars between the tall whites and Nordics against the reptilians who want to dominate and control Earth, and even tall grays that our progenitor. They're very ancient. They're very tall and thin. They're very different from the artificial intelligence grays that we have known since the 40s. That even these tall grays that inhabit a star called Epsilon Indi in our interstellar neighborhood, that they have, the tall grays, the tall whites, and the Nordics, they have used Earth as a laboratory for making all kinds of life forms for at least 278 million years. And that's very close to what the independent DIA told me in December of 1999, that our government has proof, and that there have been 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations using Earth for at least 270 million. So these are different sources along quite a ways between 1999 and 2002 to 2003. And they have the same timeline. Further, there are hostile insects called Frontaloids who inhabit the Epsilon Aradani solar system only 10.5 light years from Earth. My source says the insects want Earth without humans on it, which is exactly what the reptilians want. They want Earth without humans on it. My source also knows that newly elected US President Ronald Reagan was given a briefing at Camp David on March 6 to 8, 1981, by CIA, DIA, NSA analysts who introduced the president to 5 different ET species and the threat of the hostile insects on Epsilon Eridani, 10.5 light years from Earth. This transcript excerpt from the Reagan Briefing is found in the Serpo 27A release, CIA, DIA, NSA briefing about ETs for President Ronald Reagan, March 6 to 8, 1981 at Camp David, Maryland. CIA Director William Casey says, okay, give the president the names, caretaker. The caretaker, oh, thank you, Mr. President. The 5 species are called EBENs, that stands for extraterrestrial biological entities, Archeloids, Quadloids, Heplaloids, and Frontaloids. These names were given to the alien species by the intelligence community, specifically by MJ5. And I know that the actual biochemist who did the communication on the names is Emmett Chappell, who worked at Goddard. He's been dead for a few years, but it was Emmett Chappell who named these 5 and other star systems. The EBENs are described as being very friendly to humans. The Frontaloids are the dangerous ones, and we call the hostile aliens simply that, HAV, meaning hostile alien visitors. MJ12 placed that code on them back in the 1950s. And let me say this again, the Frontaloids are the dangerous ones. These are hostile alien visitors, and MJ12 was they had knowledge of them and their hostile intent in the 1950s. That means the United States, probably with some World War II allies, has been hiding its detailed knowledge of extraterrestrials and a very hostile ET threat for the past 75 years. Further quoting my source, the tall whites keep our US Space Force and intelligence operatives in JSOC. They are the ones that are at the central of the hub of all activity around ETs. JSOC is the Joint Special Operations Command, and they keep everyone else informed and up to date on what other intelligences are visiting Earth and for what reasons. My source considers the tall whites to be our Earth original source race. I think the tall whites are the main Earth genetic manipulators of evolving primates that created Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon Homo sapien. The tall whites have not followed the evolutionary path that most other species have. The tall whites are a unique species and have reverence for their family structure and for a higher power that we call God. Linda, you talked about the DIA analyst and that issue of 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations on this planet. And the person that I was talking to for backup on this said that that was absolutely true and that the figure 278 million was correct, of proof that the government has, apparently from something that has been supplied by the tall whites, about this ongoing 3-way fight on the earth for 278 million years, and that today it is considered, the earth is considered a perfect laboratory for multiple life forms, and it is fought over for that reason. And these are Sirius B type Nordics. They have 9 different variations of their species that we would term a race. And these ETs look so close to us humans. Quote, if I sat you in a room with them, you would not know that they are off-worlders, as we say, close quote. According to my source, Earth has had many genetic upgrades through time, and humans are a blend of 3 primary ET sources. The first genetic manipulators of Earth were probably Nordics from the Procyon A and B binary star system, 11.46 light years from Earth, because medically, humans seem to have the most physical attributes genetically from the Procyon Nordics, who have been genetically interacting with humanoid primates on Earth, going back specifically 70,000 years to a very specific time of genetic manipulation that our government has studied. And the Sirius beings are allegedly the ones that built the Sphinx and obelisks and pyramids of ancient Egypt. But another group of Nordics from Proxima b in the Alpha Centauri triple star system were also genetic manipulators of Earth humanoids. Nordics have 9 different variations in their species, and a 3rd genetic manipulation of Earth came from the Sirius binary system. Sirius A is the brightest star in the Earth's sky. Sirius B is a very small, faint white dwarf companion to Sirius A. But military aerospace people with information about ET genetic manipulations of Earth life say that the first and the oldest ET race to have manipulated genetics on Earth was from Sirius B 134 million years ago, before Sirius B became a white dwarf star. The Sirius B race allegedly are the genetic source of darker eyes and darker melanin in skin tissue compared to the blonde, blue-eyed Nordics. Both Sirius A and B are populated now by the same race that my aerospace source says has had the most involvement with our development to current modern Homo sapien. Robert Temple showed that 5,000 years ago, in the ancient Mediterranean cultures of Sumer and Egypt, those civilizations possessed not only great wealth and learning, but also they had great physics and astrophysical knowledge, which they claimed was imported to them by extraterrestrial visitors from the bright star Sirius, echoed by the Dogon tribe in Mali, West Africa. My source told me this past summer of 2022 that the USS Curtis LeMay and the USS Helen Keller starships, in their research of 28 cataloged solar systems at our end of the Milky Way galaxy, are now exploring further in that arm of the Milky Way galaxy. And my aerospace source in June of 2022 also sent me this information, quote, currently both the USS Curtis LeMay and the USS Helen Keller have been to 28 solar systems to catalog them, and we now work with Alcubierre drive, warp drive. We use artificial gravity wells at high light speed travel. We have to be in an area of space where the danger of natural gravity wells are less of an issue, which happens to be in the lower and upper portions of the Milky Way stellar arm that Earth is in now. This is where we travel at extreme light speed velocity. And that ratio of if you could go 50 light years and you are in deep quantum tunneling, which is the Alcubierre warp drive, that you can do something like 50 light years in 5 Earth days. Quote, just about every catalog species to date that we have confirmed is very close to us in human form. The differences are more in bone structure, height, pigmentation, skull ridges, eye structure, and eye color, and multiple stranded DNA. He said, I personally have only had direct experience with the tall whites. Other information came from many corresponding classified briefings, usually from the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, through the years that I was working in the aerospace company. Another source told me that working with the tall whites was like working with a human who had 5 Cray supercomputers for a brain. I mentioned it earlier when we were having the computer problems. But when you think about this, that a powerful Cray single computer can do 1,000,000 billion operations a second. It's called 1,000,000 gigaflops, 1 billion operations a second, and multiply it times 5. That is the way these men who have worked side by side with tall whites, that's what they describe. And to me, this all leaves more questions than I have been able to give you an outline of in this regard. If they care and they have a vested interest in us, why would we still have problems with Frontaloid insects from 10.5 light years away? There are so many strange contradictions the deeper you get into the material. I think the men that I've been able to look in their eye directly, which have only been 3 in all of these years, they will give you the sense that we are collaborating with tall whites and Nordics. And when you say, what is their vested interest? Why do they have a vested interest in whether we survive or not? It usually comes back, you get words like, they were involved in our creation and the whole planet is an experiment. And I have heard variations on that theme, that our Earth right now is considered to be in some critical test stage about whether or not beings of a biological nature with a plasma soul, would they evolve with education by tall whites and Nordics over a period of time in which they would reject what we would call power brokers? Would they reject priorities that had to do with a kind of selfish survival? Or would they be able, with the tall whites, be able to evolve them, teach them, so that they would be choosing through their soul, through their agape love of each other as fellow beings without tribal warfare? And right now, we had that wonderful session upstairs, and it makes you feel like, well, we'll make it through this. Don't give up. That all of the chaos and the 28 families that have control over all the money in the world, and the problems of people being able to survive. 8 billion is too much for this planet. How do you reduce the population fairly? All of those questions. And it was only a few months ago that I was able, in a very specific communication, to ask some of these questions. And it was interesting to me that these 2 aerospace people and military person, that they see us as true babies, and that whatever is the big originally stated goal that they had, that whatever we are, that we have ended up both disappointing them and surprising them. And it is the fact that we have surprised the original genetic manipulators of us that apparently now is one of the main reasons that the tall whites and the Nordics are hanging in there with the idea that they have made something that might end up being special if we can get past our own tribalism, because we have plasmas, otherwise known as souls, that apparently are truly unique. And today, I'm so sorry about all the technical problems, but I think that you get this feeling that what I'm trying to share are both the contradictions and the puzzles of why we seem to be inside of a war we're not aware of. No one has ever told us the truth. We are a species that has been trying to stand up and be alive on Earth for at least 45,000 years since the crossfade with Neanderthalensis. And nobody has ever told Homo sapiens sapien the truth in a formal or organized way. And now, in this moving forth 2023 onward, there was a physicist in 2014. I got to spend about 5 hours with him on one particular day. He was known to people that I had known for a long time. He showed me ID badges that he was able to get into a variety of laboratories for real. And in those several hours, he said that he had worked at Area 51 S4 in 1972. And that was 3 years after Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. And he said, as a physicist, he was both fascinated and discouraged that the work that they were being asked to do at Area 51 S4 at that particular period of time, starting in 72, was to consider the physics of a planet that's 8,000 miles in diameter, 25,000 miles circumference, 2/3 deep water, and to consider that physical description, what would happen if another extraterrestrial insight that had been given to them about the black hole at the center of this Milky Way galaxy, doing a periodic burping was the word, not a release of matter, a burping of energy and heat. And he said, what do you think would happen if a body like our Earth encounters a whole huge volume of high heat and gas? And I have no idea. And he said, think of Earth hitting a brick wall. He said, what do you think would happen? And the first thing that comes to mind is the inertia of deep oceans, that the water could turn into another huge flood event that may or may not be why there was a so-called Noah event in the past. But he said that this was a serious consideration for the decade of 2020 to 2030. I had heard about this decade from other people before, but he was the most serious. And so here we are, finally getting to a point where this spring of April 2023, which both of these men have told me that they have had briefings on a year ago, that we would be in this solar system moving into, we're if you look at do a search on the Milky Way galaxy and Earth, where Earth is, you'll see that it's in it's like a little thread next to a bigger piece, like yarn, thread to yarn. And that in this very particular little thread that our solar system is in, that very specific part of the Milky Way galaxy is going to go into an agitated frequency. That the frequency will be higher than where we have been for some long period of time. And that the frequency that the Earth solar system will move into will have an impact on human brains, on energy, on animals, and the tie also goes to something that Stuart Hameroff and Roger Penrose have hypothesized. This goes back I think it was about 8 years ago, and they did a paper together, and it was that there had been a medical discovery with an electron microscope that the human brain in certain patches has little tiny microscopic tubules. And Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff are hypothesizing that those tubules in the human brain are there specifically to interact with the universe, frequencies in the universe, and that would be the path to human consciousness and the universe being a conscious entity, as some of the physicists say. And if that is part of what the physicists were studying, also in 2014, that this event would occur, the black hole would emit this energy, it could impact with not just the Earth, but the solar system, and there could be some huge inertial reaction that would be in flooding. And the reason I bring this up is not to be scary. I don't feel, frankly, afraid of any of this. It's that for a very long time, 1972 for this particular physicist, 1950s for the other information that I was saying, that we have been on a planet that has been increasing in population to now 8 billion. And we have never ever been told the truth. And it is so astounding to look at each other and realize that according to the new construct that I'm sharing with you today from the aerospace whistleblower and the military whistleblower, is we are a genetic manipulation product of two extraterrestrial groups that collaborate, the Tall Whites and the Nordics. And they are supposed to be the ones right now with the only ability to protect this planet and humans. And you would think that that would be a reason for everybody to be told the truth. My own personal conviction after 81 revolutions around the sun is if you are not dealing in truth with yourself and with other people, it's a lost, it's very strange to me. If we were told everything I've said to you today, but through the JSOC, through the DIA, NSA, CIA, and they told the truth, do you think that you would collapse on the floor? Does anybody feel like it's too much?
No.
I don't either. The bigger box that the physicist in 2014 told me that we are dealing with this big problem, and I'm going to leave this with you to think about today. Everything may be absolutely true, that the enormously genius Tall Whites and the Nordics manipulated DNA in already evolving primates on Earth 278,000 years ago, and we are the ultimate product at this point. That may be absolutely true. Why would telling the truth about that, going back thousands of years to Anunnaki and Assyrians and the groups of Egypt, if they are in fact connected to the tall whites and the Nordics, which some of the arguments are that they're all related, but I'm going to be talking on Monday about the Anunnaki in relationship to another genetic manipulation that I think is fascinating. But what I'm trying to get to is, if you go back to the history lens and you come up through the last 278,000 years, Göbekli Tepe was 12,000, and we know that there were Homo erectus bones anyway 2 million years ago in Africa. The question of three competing extraterrestrial civilizations, the reptiles, the Nordics, the whites, and that the grays may have been involved in there as well, that they fought over wanting Earth for each of their respective purposes and goals. And we end up in World War II and going into the 50s with a word called flying saucer from Kenneth Arnold in Washington, because it looked like a saucer skipping across water, that became a first alleged word. And then Roswell leaked, and that was our so-called first introduction to UFOs and ETs as a concept. Why would those previous civilizations, going back all the way into maybe Atlantis, why would they not have told who they had developed then straightforwardly, that they were from other parts of the universe and that they had made us? All of this goes to the question of what is the real reason for this battle over Earth? And why would it have been going on for so long? And now why are we at 2023 and we still have not been told the truth that our government has known since World War II? The whole thing bothers me to my core. I'm trying as best I can to understand from people that I think have been exposed to truths in their work. Meaning work that is not shared with the American public, but that they are doing work and then they decide to be a whistleblower to a journalist such as me. And they say that they want the truth to be told for a whole bunch of reasons. And yet we are facing this year even wondering if one of the statements to me last year was that in April of 2023, that when we move into this higher frequency in this little tiny thread next to the bigger band of the Milky Way galaxy, that the frequency will be felt and will be interacted by everything on the surface of the Earth. And that what they are projecting will be occurring with that higher frequency is that it will have an impact on human emotions, thoughts, activities, perhaps through these microtubules that Hameroff and Roger Penrose have written about. But whatever the vehicle is, April of 2023 could be a change in emotional frequency, but it is also supposed to be heralded by the James Webb Telescope and some kind of a headline that would be breaking news. the Webb telescope has now confirmed a biological signature, and I'm going to fill in the one that I've heard the most, the fourth planet in the TRAPPIST-1 solar system, which is about 40 light years from the Earth. And I wanted to ask you as an audience, have you heard in your life anything that you felt was an honest effort to talk to you about other life in the universe?
No. No.
And yeah, me. And if this April of 2023, that is a headline, what would you want to do in relationship to your political representatives?
Kill them. Right?
I'm serious.
Oh, God.
Would anybody articulate? If you get that breaking headline, biological signature doesn't mean that they found humans or humanoids. Biological signature is a convenient box to announce there's something biological in another solar system, and to do it in the least threatening way possible, knowing that the Frontaloid insects are a very, very serious problem. And I was just curious if anybody would say, I would immediately call my senator, my congressman, and say, we need some official explanation be given to us in public worldwide about what do you know about the other intelligences that have been interacting with this planet since World War II. We need and we deserve that truth.
Linda,
And if it doesn't happen, what a weird planet we're on.
I just want to say that if this light blast does happen in April, then
It's
maybe
not a light blast.
where
It's energy,
Energy.
frequency. It would be like it could happen here, you wouldn't see, but you would feel.
I would hope and pray that they get absorbed into that and their consciousness raises where they take action to do so, to change. And I was actually working with a Chandler who said that it might happen in June with the unveiling of the Webb, truth that comes out for aliens.
And I think, if I'm reading in between the lines of what you're saying, it would be ideal, wouldn't it, if we all, tall whites, Nordics, grays, humanity as a species, no matter how many different colors, shapes, and all of that, if we all suddenly were finally hearing the same words from all levels of government, everyone, here is the truth. Tall whites, Nordics, stand up in front of a camera. Let's just break through this right now. Yes, there are other ETs. Yes, we have had help. Yes, there are enemies. Yes, there are threats. Yes, we are the product of extraterrestrial manipulation of DNA and already evolving primates. That is the truth.
We're one family. We got to realize that.
Exactly. Doesn't that make you feel like you love all of us? I mean, that we are first and foremost a fellow human, that the Greeks said, if humans could have agape love with each other, that they would see each other as a fellow being, nothing to do with sex, fellow being, that you would love, you could not kill, you could not. That's where it seems to me, if this all evolved to that, it would all have been worth maybe the angst. But if it continues to go forward in this particular year of this century, in which we'll give them a little tiny piece and then go away, and the US Senate people who want to ask questions, no. That's what happened after last year, when it was going to be that there would, in the Defense Authorization Act, there was going to be a new amendment that would take the pressure off of whistleblowers. And I don't know how many of you know, but I'll just boil it down to what they did. They basically took whistleblower out of the legislation. And the only thing that it allows, let's say that you're a corporal and you have just had a UFO land in front of you on a runway and you have seen beings come out, make it really dramatic. The new law says that corporal can go to his most immediate superior and say what he just saw without losing his paycheck, having him being stripped down, something happening just because he tells his superior what he saw. That now, from corporal to whoever's the next higher rank, the corporal can go to the next higher rank and say, cannot talk to another human being. It's very weird how this has all gone through, like things were going to get better and more honest. And that's why my efforts today, in spite of all the computer problems, I hope that you have appreciated at least seeing what I think are real insights from real people who have been working on real matters of outer space with actual beings such as the tall whites, and they have been doing it for a long time. Our government knew about a variety of extraterrestrial issues in World War II. And that here we are, 8 billion people on this planet with terrible wars, terrible geophysical problems. This could be, in some ways, the perfect moment to tell the whole truth. It would be like a kind of reset. And that we would be going forward with new education, new academics. But the one thing that makes me feel like this would be the right thing to do is to tell the whole truth, including the Frontaloids, the insects that want Earth without humans on it, where the tall whites are supposed to be able to fend them off forever. If in 2023, in a brand new frequency, with helpful extraterrestrials trying to help, if humanity and its alleged political leaders got on the same page with the same truth for the last 278 million years of whatever we know about that history, I just don't see how we could continue to perpetuate killing each other. And that's why I have been doing this work, and apologize that it got cracked somehow in the digital system. But I hope, maybe I should ask for a show of hands. How many of you, in spite of the technical problems, how many of you found this presentation from these people to be of interest and help to you? Well, most of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for those of you who are coming to Monday, I think it's a very powerful presentation.